Today on Locked On Red Wings, Lucas Raymond signed locked down for 8 more years. We'll talk about that as well as Jonathan Berger's 1-year contract on today's episode of Locked On Red Wings.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
He can't keep getting away with it. This is ridiculous. Every single time we record an episode, we get done recording and then bam, the big news drops. He did it with Tarasenko on us. He did it with Patrick Kane on us. And he's doing it again with Lucas Raymond. Lucas Raymond is signed to an 8-year deal. $8 million, $8.075 million to be precise on that contract. We are going to talk about that pretty much the entire episode of Locked On Red Wings. I am your host, Brian Fisher. I am a color commentator for Oakland University Hockey. My other host, the other host of Locked On Red Wings, is Scotty Bentley. He is a freelance journalist for the Detroit News and the host of Locked On Tigers. Man, this is going to be like the highest energy pod we've had in a while, Scotty. We're so amped to talk about this because we've been waiting all year. We still got one more contract left to sign, but we're halfway there, dude.
It's funny you said we've been waiting all year. We have literally been waiting all year. We have literally been waiting for this since the calendar turned to 2024. This is fantastic news for so many reasons. Obviously, just the weight off of the shoulders, right? Like it happened. We don't have to talk about if and when and all these hypotheticals. Like it's done. Raymond's here for the next 8 years. But on top of that, fantastic value. I cannot wait to jump into the numbers here and talk about the value that they got Raymond for. And then I do think that there is a conversation surrounding Berger as well, who you mentioned there at the beginning, signs a 1-year deal as well. I think that has some implications too.
Yes, absolutely. And before we get to any of that, I got to let you guys know. Sorry, I'm going a million miles a minute because I'm super amped, and I tend to do that. Let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket and from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also want to thank you guys for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and, of course, on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Scotty, let's begin with the lost episode, the Bergeron episode. Let's begin where we began there. First blush, what's your reaction to this contract? Overpaid, underpaid, or just right? Sounds familiar, right?
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. I think, we had speculated for a while what this number was going to look like. I think most people had it around 8, and there was some debate on whether, the Raymond camp and his agent was trying to kind of force the hand of the Wings and get that to be a higher and higher number, maybe even approaching like 8.5, which, at that price, I think a lot of people would have probably looked at that and been like, all right, like we're still pumped about it. That's still fine, but that's starting to get a little bit pricey. And I think below 8 was kind of unreasonable. I did not expect Raymond to take a deal that started with the number 7. So I think that this is kind of like perfect. This is great. And from a pure value perspective of not only what he's getting paid now, but looking towards the future, man, like this is such a good deal for the Detroit Red Wings. It's beautiful. I cannot stress how great of a deal I think this is. This is truly, something where, okay, right now, you give him $8 million. If he can get around that 90-point mark that, we've talked about, like maybe him reaching at his absolute peak. But if he can even be, like in the, around point a game and take that step forward again that we expect him to at his age, man, like this is a guy that's going to be unbelievably productive now. And then 8 years from now, he's still going to be like 30? Like he's so young that on the back 9 of this, right, the last 4 years of this deal, you have the potential to be getting him in his prime years of like his late 20s on an absolute steal if you're looking at cap hit, right? The cap's going to continue going up as it always does. It's going to go up every couple of years or whatever throughout these 8 years. And you really have the potential to be paying, like a 28 or 29-year-old Lucas Raymond far, far less than what his value will be worth at that point in time. This is a huge win for the Red Wings. It's obviously a huge win for Lucas Raymond as well, who locks up that financial security, gets that value, gets over 8, which is what he wanted. And we ball, baby. What an absolutely just absolutely phenomenal day.
Yeah, I mean, he's just scratching the surface of what he can become, right? Like, that's the thing. We touched about it in the Lost episode. I mean, the too hot, the too cold thing with Jonathan Berggren. And I think this is a contract that's like right where it needs to be, right? I mentioned, I know you said you didn't see him coming in under 8. I said I could see him on the Lost episode. We're going to say that a lot, just like with the Tarasenko one. That I could see him coming in at like 7.8 at the lowest. Like that's where I could see him getting ground down to. But he wasn't going to reach Tim Stutzel's number, which was 8.3. And I thought Seth Jarvis's number at 7.4 was too far in the other direction. Both of those are two players that both have had one very good season. I thought he'd come in between there, and he did. Just not even 8.1, less than $8.1 million for Lucas Raymond is great value for a guy who's, didn't he just turn 23 this season, right? Like, he's still so incredibly young. I'm sorry, he's 22. He just turned 22 this season.
Right.
And he's had a 70-point season, 23 goals. He led the team in points. So not only is this a good contract now, but because it's 8 years, as he progresses and gets better, because again, it's not as much of a gamble as you think it is, because we've already seen it 1 year. He's proven it 1 year. Yes, he's going to have to replicate that and continue to build upon that. It would have been more of a gamble if he hadn't had a 70-point and 30-goal season under his belt. If he had like 55 points and they committed this, I'd be like, we haven't quite seen it yet. The potential's there, but now we've seen him take that definitive step in the right direction. He's getting paid worth what a 70-point winger, 30-goal scorer is probably worth. And then on top of that, as he continues to climb and get better, that value is going to be, and as the cap rises as well, the $8 million by year 3, year 4, year 5 is going to look like a steal as this team climbs towards contention. This is something we've been waiting on for so long, and this is around a number where we were I think at the highest we ever had him was 8.5, right? We said conservatively, if Seider and Raymond both take 8.5 for 17. Not that we were saying that that's exactly what they were going to get, but if they combined took 17 million, that'd be 8.5. So we always had him at the high end of 8.5 and the low end for me personally of 7.8. You personally of 8 million? I mean, for him to come in at the low end is an incredible job by Steve Yzerman to really grind them down to that number, but still giving him what he's worth. It's just great day to be a Red Wings fan. Lock up that piece of the core, baby.
Absolutely fantastic, man. Yeah. Now, and I think the everyone's initial reaction is okay, this is awesome and this is great, and we have one of our, again, like core pieces long term, and then your mind goes, okay, well now, like Mo is next, like to the point where like in the back of my head I'm like, okay, are we gonna have to record a third time tonight? Because like I can't imagine there's too many, like T's to cross and I's to dot, here with the Seider situation. Now it's like, okay, you got Berger, you got Raymond, you have, I think it's 8.74, I think is what Boltman said, to be exact, like amount of cash left in your cap. That is what you have left to extend Seider. And I can't imagine they're giving the contract to Raymond without having an understanding of, or they're not negotiating with Seider without knowing how much they were going to give Raymond, which, planning ahead and whatnot. So like, I can't imagine it's going to be too much longer until they lock up Mo too. And then it's game time, baby.
Yeah, and I mean, just to give you a couple other comparables, these aren't one for one because the positions aren't always the same, but centers Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas of the St. Louis Blues, they got paid $8.125. That kicked it. This last year's the first year of that deal, so they were signed in the offseason prior to that. I know they're centers, so their positional value is a little bit higher than Lucas Raymond as a winger, but for Raymond to come in at a price lower than that, despite putting up comparable production the last couple of years. I mean, Jordan Cairo only had 67 points and 30 goals this year. Last year, the year before his contract kicked in, he had 73 points and 37, comparable to what Lucas Raymond had. So for him to get a contract that is comparable to that number, less than that number, despite having comparable statistics, is incredible work by Steve Yzerman. I think the only two contracts that are like more wow, like holy crap, I can't believe that they came in at that number, was Seth Jarvis's 7.4 and Matt Boldy's $7 million. Seth Jarvis or Matt Boldy getting $7 million after having put up a 63.81 game season with 30 goals and 30 assists, followed by a 69-point season, is great work by the Wild. But I mean, that's they underpaid for how good he is at age 23, so he would have been 22 at the time. But like Lucas Raymond's getting on the low end of the range that would have been acceptable for his production, and that's a great job by Steve Yzerman.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk, you mentioned it, kind of teased it there, Moritz Seider, what that leaves left for him, and if this adjusts what we expect him to get. And then in segment 3, we'll talk about the Giannis and Berggren extension, something we talked 2 segments ago about in the Lost episode. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. You've heard us talk about it. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Got a little ahead of myself there. All right, Moritz Seider, last big fish remaining. Now you can dedicate all of your energy to getting the big German defenseman signed. Moritz Seider signed to $8.075 million contract. Giannis and Berggren signed to a 1-year deal at $825,000 earlier in the day, and we'll talk about that in segment 3. But that leaves the Red Wings with about $8,748,000 left, roughly. The question becomes, does this Lucas Raymond contract now shift what you expect Moritz Seider to receive?
No. There's 8.74 left. I don't think anyone was expecting him to get paid more than Larkin, and I think that he being Seider there, and I think that's something that we've talked about. Well, I know we talked about on the Lost show, but that's something we've talked about a little bit over the summer too, where, I think that, and again, we have speculated that Yzerman may want to set a precedent that is no one's getting paid more than Larkin. And so with 8.74 left, you can metaphorically kind of empty the tank there on Seider and not worry about it. If he is demanding more than what you just gave, or than what you have left over, rather, then I guess that would be somewhat of a problem. But I can't imagine that he's like, I need 9 or I'm out of here, right? I think that you have plenty of money to do that. So the long-winded way and me rambling on of just saying nothing has changed as far as my expectations for Seider go.
Right, and Elliot Friedman of 32 Thoughts mentioned that he thinks Seider's the only one who could maybe push for Larkin's number, but that was just him speculating. I would be shocked if he gets 8.7. And there is 8.7 left in the tank to give Dylan Larkin. He's not getting more than him, but he could match that. And I know that a #1 defenseman is really hard to come by, and he is genuinely a #1 defenseman. I mean, doing what he's doing with the deployment that he's been given, right? 42 points from a two-way defenseman, getting second power play unit minutes, while given the deployments he's given, the toughest in the league by a good margin, is incredible. And that's only his production's only going to get better too, and his analytics are only going to get better too as they bring him back down to where most #1s are in terms of deployment, as he gets the first power play unit production that he deserves. And so, he could push for that number in the future, but I think that this year, especially with the evidence that we have with Lucas Raymond just now, I think he might push that number down to 8.5 or beneath. I'm suspecting somewhere between 8.3 and 8.5 for Moritz Seider. That's where we were when we recorded the Lost episode with Jonathan Berggren. That's where I'm at still now. I think that's where he stands, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm kind of expecting right around 8.5. That's kind of where I sit here. Which, if that happens, would be great. That leaves you about 200,000 under the cap for this year, which doesn't matter at all because you have pretty much a full roster, but gives you at least you're under the cap this year, and then going into next year you'll have more players come off the books, and you start the cycle all over again. But yeah, if we're walking away from this off season, right? If we're going into training camp this weekend, and it's bring back Kane, lock up Seider and Raymond for max years, for 8 years, bring in Vlad, bring in the other depth players they've gotten, address goalie to at least some extent. Is it the really big, bright and flashy off season, right? Is it the big, you went out and you got an elite, top end 90 to 100 point score that wasn't in your organization last year? No, but I still think that's an incredibly successful offseason. I think if, you're extending your core, your building blocks that you're going to put and fill pieces around for the next, hopefully 8+ years. And on top of that, you addressed kind of the between the margins, outside of the core pieces as well that aren't long-term options. And man, I think that there's a lot of reason to be excited. And this contract is beautiful. I cannot express how incredibly awesome 8x8 is for Razor.
Dude, and you know what? The sense of relief too. There's obviously a huge amount of excitement to lock up a core piece of your team at a good number for 8 years, to thereby also give you flexibility in the future to build around him. That's super exciting. But let's also not talk, let's not gloss over how much of a relief it is that this finally got done. This has been something that's been eating at us and the entire fan base all summer long. Every single day I'd sit and press F5, and there's still one more contract that needs to be done. But every single day I'd be sitting here pressing F5 at my desk at work or here. So it's just, I'm so relieved to have it finally happen and to know that the wheels are turning. And the other part of this too is now that this is done, you can fully dedicate yourself to signing Moritz Seider. So Lucas Raymond is signed and done before training camp. Training camp starts on Thursday, I believe. This is Monday as of recording this. So he has time to get here from overseas, be a part of training camp. And now you not just, obviously you want Seider done before training camp, but if it's not, now you have yourself laser focused in accomplishing that goal and getting him here before the season started. This not only, and I know there's still one contract left to be signed, right? Nothing's set in stone yet, but getting this done now just wipes away 99% of my anxiety about Moritz Seider, because now I know that he's not fighting war on two fronts. He's got one more guy that he has to sign, and that's Moritz Seider, and I have 100% faith that it gets done.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this is, like I said earlier, I had alluded to that at the beginning of the show too. This completely sets up Seider to sign not only before training camp, but honestly, it wouldn't shock me if tomorrow's show was just about signing Seider. That is, I don't know what else there would be to discuss. Clearly they have a general vicinity of a number already in mind, and that, or else they wouldn't have put pen to paper with Raymond. So, clearly they left him enough money over to do that. So yeah, it wouldn't shock me if this was a pretty quick follow up here.
Yeah, and you got a few days to get it done, and I think they do. I also think it's really funny too. This is just another example of, nobody having it first, right? No one had it first with Tarasenko. I think
that's the
30
wing,
minutes.
Man.
30 minutes before Kane got done, the Kane news came out. So they beat the Red Wings on that one. But we've been getting Elliot Friedman and Dave Pagnotta reports for 2 weeks saying that they're still far apart and that they're grinding away at it. And I kept saying, with the way the Wings do it, it's just gonna happen. And literally this morning we got a report that they're still grinding away and that they're not sure what the number is and there's no news. And then bang, less than 12 hours later, here we go, Raymond is signed. Like, when it was going to happen, it was going to happen. Because Steve Yzerman doesn't let things leak. And I both love that and hate that about him. Because I want some info every once in a while. I need some breadcrumbs to keep going.
That's ridiculous. No, you would much rather at this than the alternative, I promise.
Oh, I mean, I'm talking about Roofer Radio, Like, obviously, as a tried and true Red Wings fan, I'd much rather him keep his cards close to his chest. But as a guy who has a podcast to run, every once in a while, I'm like, give me a couple crumbs, right? Just a little bit of news. A little bit of news.
So ridiculous.
You love me. We're going to go to segment 3. We're going to talk about Jonathan Berggren's extension. Stay tuned. So, Scotty, segment 3, Locked On Red Wings. We spent 20 minutes talking about Jonathan Berggren earlier in the day in an episode that will, in short order, be deleted off YouTube and our hosting platform. Luckily, it was set to premiere, so nobody's heard it yet. But sorry to anyone who has seen the Berggren signs extension thumbnail on your YouTube feeds, that it will be gone in short order and will have been gone by the time you're hearing this. But Jonathan Berggren did sign a 1-year deal worth $825,000. I'm used to saying point now because
8,200, baby.
8,200. Well, I wanted to say 8.2 because Raymond signed 8.075, but $825,000 contract. Same question I had for you at the start of the show with Lucas Raymond. Like, where are your thoughts with this deal?
Honestly, the first thing that I thought of when I got this notification was prove it. And we talked about that a lot in the Lost show. So that's what I'll reiterate again is like, this is kind of the epitome of a prove it deal. Like, truly, This is okay. You know what? 2 years ago, you played over 2/3 of the season. Was it 66, 67 games?
Something along the lines.
With the Detroit Red Wings 2 years ago. He then got demoted. Like, that is what happened. He was on the team for a vast majority of 2 seasons ago. And then they signed players to move him off of the roster going into last year. And he played, I think you told me, a little bit ago, 12 games, 11 or 12 games for the Wings this past year. He was not a part of the Red Wings this past year, basically, right? Like, he was a filler a couple of times when they needed an emergency player called up. So, like, this is his, I don't want to say like his last chance. I'm not trying to be too dramatic about it, but this really is a prove it deal. This is an RFA 1 year. If you can be that depth scoring option and just be a little bit better defensively, I'm not asking for the world, man. I'm not asking for this guy to just be this bottom 6 grinder that's just some elite level defender and is incredible in the neutral zone. Just give me sound defense. Give me you not being a complete liability. Like, your line being able to be actually like deployed in the defensive zone sometimes. Like, just that base, very low bar level of defense, and then score goals like you always have. And I think that he will probably earn another contract this time next summer. Like, that's really all the Wings are looking for. They're not expecting this dude to come in here and be a top 6, point producer. If he can be a bottom 6, 3rd or 4th line goal scorer that's not a complete traffic cone on defense, he's going to be a part of this team. And you have mentioned it a few times. Like, we had this conversation with Veleno last year, right? Where it was like, okay, 2 years ago was not very good. Last year was a lot better. And that last year was his prove it deal. And so I think that it's obviously different play styles. I'm not comparing them as players, but it's a similar situation off the ice as far as this contract goes, I think.
No, and I mentioned it too in regards to Veleno, right? Like, it was the same exact contract when he was an RFA, right. And the contract that he ended up signing was 1 year at $825,000. It was a pay cut from his ELC, but he hadn't lived up to his expectations. For Veleno, that was as a first-round pick. For Berggren, that was as a second-round pick that burst onto the scene. Like, clearly the expectation for Berggren going into the training camp this year, at least in my opinion, was they wanted him to make, realize my mic was somewhat turned to the side. What they wanted from him was to make the team, and he didn't. And while he did light it up in Grand Rapids, there is no denying that. He had over a point per game, and he had like 20-something goals and 30-something assists, like 24 and 35, something along those lines in Grand Rapids. They wanted him to be in the NHL, and so they're saying, hey, here's a contract. This is our template, what we do for guys who are underperforming, but we still want to be part of this team and think that they can prove it. Sign this, and then if you prove it next year, we'll give you the term, a little bit more term and a little bit more money. And I agree with you. I think that for him to earn a contract with a substantial upgrade, when I say substantial, I don't mean like $4 million, but, over $1 million, because that is a substantial pay raise, is to like not even be good defensively, right? Like that's where the bar is for him to play defensively. It's to try, because we know what he is. Like, be better than Daniel Sprong defensively, because that
was just such a low bar. I cannot stress how low of a bar Daniel Sprong is defensively. Love Spronger, right? Great addition. He was a fun year, good depth goal scorer and whatnot. I cannot actually express how low of a bar it is for his defense specifically to be cleared.
Right, and that's exactly it. He was a fun depth scorer who got power play minutes and would score goals, but because he did not try, that's what you want from Berggren.
Berger to be, right?
Right. And it's going to depend too on usage, right? Like getting him on a line that's capable of generating offense. But he's going to probably get looks on the power play. He's going to play in a depth scoring role. I have no worries that he's going to score goals. Like I'm not concerned about that. He had 28 points in 60 whatever games it was, 67 I think it was 2 years ago. Like he's going to be close to half point per game in bottom six, which is fantastic. It's just he will stick in the lineup if his defensive game takes a step forward, if he's giving effort and shows he is trying to learn how to play defense. That's why Daniel Sprong got scratched, because it was clear he was floating, looking for an opportunity to head down the ice the other way. He wasn't engaged in the defensive zone. He wasn't helping his defenders. He wasn't helping in transition, and that's why he got scratched. If Jonathan Berggren is trying to help his defenders and trying to help the team in transition, he's going to keep getting looks, and he's going to earn a paycheck, because I'm not worried about his offensive numbers.
Agreed.
Because Derek Lalonde's not going to let him only play forward or only play offense. Yeah. Lalonde wants to install a defensive style game, and Yzerman has expressed a need for this team to get better defensively.
Yeah, it's also the personnel isn't in place for him to only get offensive deployments.
Right.
Like the only line that is going to be like, y'all are not going to get deployed on defense is going to be if Vlad and Kane end up on a line together, right?
Correct.
Outside of that, there's not going to be like that all offense, or there might still be the shutdown line, I guess, but like the all offense line really isn't going to exist. There isn't going to be like, oh, like that's our fourth or third line or whatever only gets deployed in the offensive zone that we just need them for depth scoring. Like, no, you let a ton of goals walk out the door for two reasons. One is you wanted to bring in more defense. You did that. All the depth players, almost all of the depth players you brought in this summer were defensive minded to help you fit the system. Two was you expected goals to be scored by the players you're promoting internally. And Jonathan Berggren is like example 1A of that point. And so, yeah, man, like this is prove it year. This is okay. Fit the system defensively. Don't even be good. Just fit the system and be able to score with other players who are going to be hopefully better than him defensively on the same line as him, and fit the system and score, push 20 goals or whatever. And he'll get a nice little 2-year 1.5 or 2x2 next season. And we'll be talking about it again in the summer.
Yeah, whatever Veleno just earned, honestly. I mean, I know, again, they're not 1-for-1 players, but there seems to be a little bit of a pattern here.
That's a pretty Veleno. If Veleno's going to play 4C, he's like Berger's a depth winger that doesn't play defense. Like that's, I don't know.
Yeah,
a little bit different than center value.
Correct. You're right. And you're right too, right? Like when you mentioned the line that he's going to play on, you're looking at who's he going to play with. He's either going to play with, in my opinion, Kopp and Rasmussen or Veleno and Rasmussen. Yeah. Two players who are two-way forwards. Like, he's going to have to help contribute in the defensive zone. He's not going to solely get deployed in the offensive zone, because I don't see him getting deployed with either Fisher or Mott, because that's a line, those guys you want in a role that's going to be more defensive-oriented. So, like, if you're going to be playing on a line with either of those guys, you're going to be expected to play a more two-way game. Not saying he has to be a two-way player, but he's going to be expected to help.
Again, just fit the system that's given to you, and everyone's going to be happy.
All right, Scotty, this was a fantastic episode. Lucas Raymond signed to an
Razor
8-year
baby
deal.
8-8.
An 8-8, just shy of 8-1 on the value of the money. I'm thinking we're back.
Buddy, I'm thinking we're back.
Oh man. Oh, he's got the aviators on.
These are too small for my head, so I'm going to wear them down so you can't really tell how ridiculous I actually look in them.
I hate to break the news. You look ridiculous with them off too.
That was good. That's fair. That's super.
You set
fair.
yourself up.
You're right. You're right. That was on a tee. You're right. 8x8 though, man. I'm so pumped. Like, it's like every 5 seconds that goes by, and I just go, man, like it's finally over. Like Raymond's here. Sider's going to be inevitably here in the next, day or two. It's just everything's sunshine and rainbows.
Iserman, Steve, are you listening? Steve,
don't
make us record. Don't make us record. Right. Don't make us record a third time tonight. Do not drop Sider later on Monday evening.
Oh my gosh.
And if you're hearing this,
be anti the deal if we have to do it.
Anti the deal, no matter he could sign it for $6 million.
Like, this is not worth it. This is garbage.
Plus, I mean, content purposes, it'd be better to get 2 episodes out of it than one, right?
Sure.
So all right, Scotty, for the second time on Monday, do you have any final thoughts?
We will, baby.
All right, for the second time on Monday. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. We have a fun crossover for you on Wednesday with Locked On Montreal Canadiens, barring
Sider doesn't sign, right?
Barring a big extension to Moritz Seider. So stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.